Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Jason Provonsha. Jason is the CEO at Steam Logistics. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. We're actually going to be talking about this idea of having the focus to execute. And I think it's going to be a very cool topic. But before we get into it, Jason, maybe you can tell us a little about what you and the Steam Logistics team are up to these days.
Sure. So Steam Logistics is a technology-driven international freight forwarder, which is essentially a third-party logistics provider. And if you want to think about it, if you're not very familiar with transportation, a simple way to think about our business is we're sort of a travel agent for freight and specifically international freight. So we help businesses, primarily U.S.-based businesses or businesses that have a strong presence in the U.S. With their import and export strategy, utilizing air and ocean transportation around the world.
Very cool. And I happen to know that Steam Logistics has been experiencing some incredible growth, which is one of the ways that we found you and one of the reasons that we wanted to bring you on the show today. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we were recently named to the Inc. magazine 5,000 fastest growing companies list this past year, and we came in at number 254 on that list. They ranked the top 5,000, and we were excited to be number 254. And I think we were number one in our category, which would be that kind of international logistics focus.
That's fantastic. And like I said, one of the reasons that we're so lucky to have you on the show today, going to be talking about having the focus to execute. So, Jason, why don't you take it away? Where are we going to start this conversation?
Well, in thinking about, first of all, you were kind to invite me to be on, and I appreciate that. And so I sort of thought about ways that I could hopefully bring some value to the audience. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so when I think about why I listen to those, it's really grounded in trying to learn something from people smarter than myself. And so I was trying to think about things that I could, touch on that I've learned just even over the past couple of years. And so the thing that comes to mind kind of immediately is focus, because our business is kind of at this inflection point where we're kind of becoming more mature as a company while also growing really fast. And what we are finding is that we just have to be a lot more disciplined about our focus. And I think even over the past couple of years, we've found ourselves sometimes not doing that very well. And it's natural. I mean, you're a startup or you're kind of an early kind of growth business. And naturally, part of that process is trying things, testing things, failing, and being willing to do those things. That's how you learn, and that's how your business becomes more effective. But there comes a point where you have to begin being a little bit more disciplined about which things you test, how much failure you're willing to accept, and really the goal there is to learn and not fail, right? And so I think the kind of overarching theme, especially for Steam this year, has been focus, and that can be tough because you sort of build a culture around sort of a looseness and a willingness to try and fail. And when you begin kind of honing that in to say, hey, yeah, that's great, but we also have very articulated goals that we're trying to achieve, and we can't do everything. And so that's sort of what brought this whole thing to mind. This is a mantra at Steam right now, and so it was easy to connect to that subject when you asked.
And so, Jason, if you're talking about you have less of a need to test and fail, do you still balance that against kind of people saying, you have to innovate more quickly than ever. I mean, things are the way in which we conduct business is changing more rapidly than ever before. I mean, is there still a balance there? Do you take that into consideration?
Absolutely. I mean, this is not you can't take this and make it too legalistic, this concept of, hey, we're going to be super focused and block out all the noise. There's a balance to also keeping open minds towards things that you think will move you forward. But I think the big issue is just making sure that you, have a strategy and that it's well articulated and understood, and then essentially using that as a filter. And as these other opportunities pop up, running it through that filter and determining, hey, does this really align with what we said we want to do? And if the answer is no, then that's more than likely going to be the answer that you need to have for that particular opportunity. Having said that, there's also the need to be willing to kind of zig and zag when opportunities arise that maybe don't fit the strategy, but you have a good enough feeling about it where you want to make a small bet. But I think as you grow, they need to be smaller bets. And you can bet the farm on something when you don't have a whole lot to lose. But after you've developed a business, you have to be a little bit more thoughtful, making more small bets as opposed to one or two giant bets.
Yeah, well, easier to bet the farm when you have little to nothing to lose.
Right.
So speaking of saying no, I know that one of the second point you were going to make today is the importance of saying no to non-priority requests. What does that look like?
Well, it's difficult because I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but I came up through sales, and sales is what I care most about. And I don't know if this is true with all salespeople, but for me, I'm the easiest person to get to say yes than anybody I know. And I don't know if all salespeople are like that or not, but I am. And so I'd love to say yes. And that's been a challenge for me because obviously you can't say yes to everything. And so we've really spent a lot of time. Again, I kind of keep coming back to this filtering process of, am I saying no enough? And am I being disciplined enough around our core strategy to ensure that the yeses that I am making, we can get fully behind. And I think that's another important element of saying no more often. And there's plenty of people out there smarter than me who have kind of espoused this as a key part of how they've been successful, is just saying no more than they say yes. But the nice part about that is that when you do say yes, you've created enough space to put real weight behind that yes and make it effective, as opposed to saying yes to everything. Obviously, there's limited resources to chase after these yeses. And so if you're saying yes to everything, none of them are going to be very effective. And you find yourself being sort of a mile wide and an inch deep, which is typically not an effective strategy. And so on a personal level, worked around how to say no, but say it in a way that is not sort of disempowering to people, and helping them to understand the reasons behind that no, and telling them also that it's just no for now, not no forever. And so I think that we're beginning to build a culture around that I hope is really effective, that people understand that, hey, we want to hear any and all ideas, and they can come from absolutely anywhere. We try to be very organizationally flat around here, which really breeds that, and we appreciate that. But I think helping your teams understand that there are going to be plenty of times where these ideas can't be a priority doesn't mean they're off the table forever.
That's a really good point. I think the way in which you say no, it can still, people can take that as a brush off or a blow off. I mean, but if you do it effectively, then it won't prevent them from approaching you in the future with other ideas. They feel, oh no, this was a thoughtful consideration. It's a no for right now, but Jason was really thinking about it.
Sure, and I think it's on leadership to make sure that they take the time to both consider the idea, but also clearly explain kind of the why behind the what, and not just rotely say no, we're moving on, but help people understand. And by doing that, you're also going to help them prepare future ideas, frankly, because as the more that they fully understand the strategy, the more their ideas will align with them, as opposed to be in contrast with them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and you've, certainly sort of alluded to point number 3 when you're talking about saying no to non-priority requests, but that time is a finite resource.
It is. And, in our industry is sort of an unlimited opportunity industry. It's not like an industry that you have very small segment of prospects and customers, potential customers. So you take this infinite opportunity industry and you push that up against a finite amount of time, and it makes it even more important to know what you're doing with your time, because the opportunity costs associated with doing the wrong things are pretty dramatic. And that is an area that, if I could point to anything that we have really tried to address in our business, it's that. It's, okay, great, we just brought in a bunch of new business. Is it the right business? And why is it the right business? And what could we have done instead of going out after that particular business? And would it have been more effective? And so this concept of time is super critical to our industry, particularly because of that kind of expansive opportunity out there. But man, you can waste it really fast. And so, as leaders in the business, and I guess more broadly the industry, but particularly within the business, we have to set that example for our teams, because if our sales team is out there, chasing every opportunity that doesn't really fit our core strategy, not only is it a waste of time, it could be potentially, harmful to what our long-term strategies are. So we have to set the standard for how we view time first and foremost, and the respect that we have for it, and then help our teams have that same understanding. And certainly people tend to follow what you do, not what you say. And so that's a discipline that we're really trying to put into the company.
And so I think that's a perfect springboard into this 4th point, because we've danced around this idea, but we'll dive right into it. Is this idea of effective communication? Yes,
and this is kind of, I guess, if I were to provide a takeaway here, sure, everybody knows time's important, but how do you sort of get this discipline in your business? And trust me, I don't have all the answers, and we're not to the finish line on this by any stretch. But the things that have worked for us have been to clearly articulate this strategy and be very transparent about it. We have some very key things that we are trying to do over the next 12 months, for example, and those have been shared company-wide. We have a monthly town hall that we bring the whole company together. We serve everybody dinner, and we all spend time talking about the company. And that includes helping them to see exactly what the strategy is. And then every month we review what we did towards that. And so that's good for everything, from accountability as a leadership team. Are we accountable to our people? But also to help them understand that this isn't something that we do once a month and then we forget about it, and the next month we're on to something else. We're restating it every month. Okay, here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what we're doing. And here's the progress that we're making. And I think that level of transparency is important, first of all, to get buy-in. But second of all, just so that you can kind of point back to that filter to be able to say, guys, this is what we said we're doing. And everybody understands it. There's no confusion around that. So really just getting total alignment within the business helps you to be able to address these opportunities that come your way in a way that's understood by people and not viewed as, somebody had a bad day that day, so they don't like my idea. And that just helps a lot. And I would say, if anything, just, again, spending the time articulating the strategy and then just over communicating it. And in our case, we do it in these monthly town halls. We reinforce it with, various email communications that go out, things of that nature. But there's plenty of processes that you can put into place to communicate them. But it obviously starts with having the strategy articulated in the first place.
Yep. Can't overstate the importance of having that proper communication. So, Jason, you've experienced some tremendous growth with Steam Logistics. We've been loving asking this question at the end of our interviews. As a CEO or just as a human being, whether it's personal or professional, what kind of legacy are you hoping to leave behind?
I do think about it in two ways. You mentioned personal and professional. I think I usually start with personal. My personal focus on legacy is really more about, the kind of father I am, the kind of husband I am, things of that nature. And of course, those are things that, you think about, am I devoting the right time? Am I available to my family and those kinds of things? So when I think about personal legacy, it's all really grounded in that, not so much how am I viewed publicly to my business life so much. On the professional side, I really think when I think about legacy, I really think more about STEAM. What can STEAM be? Because this company is not me. It's a collection of really smart and devoted people. And so I think about the company's legacy in terms of, can this be a great place for people to build a career? And are we in tune with what their aspirations are for their career so that we can help make that happen? Can we make a real impact on this industry? It's a very fragmented industry, which the top player, I think, controls maybe 4% of the global market. So it's a very fragmented industry. It's hard to make noise in it. And so what can we do there? Can we be $1 billion business or more? And what can we bring to this industry, which is very old, very well established, that makes the process of moving international freight simpler and a better experience? And those are the things that we're really focused on. And that's why I think we've grown the way that we have is we are trying to bring something new to an industry that could use it. And so that's really the way I think about legacy. It's more company driven on the public side and how can we, again, do something that maybe hasn't been done before.
That's fantastic. Well, Jason, we certainly wish you all the luck in continuing to make an impact in your industry. And thank you again so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.